welcome to the Profitable Podcast. This is Leanne Scott from Chirp and Podcast in a Box. With me today, I have Kaitlyn Lemus Portillo, and she is from
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. So, Kaitlyn, welcome so much to being here with me today. I can't wait to meet you next week in person at the Ultimate SaaS Summit held in the UK, the first one. I think it'll be really exciting to have some of the big high-level names come visit us for a change instead of us always having to go over to the US. And so, welcome. I'm really pleased to have you here. Can you share with us bit about who you are and how you got there and how you got into high-level?
Thanks so much for having me today. It's a pleasure. So we got started not quite 5 years ago when High Level had just released, and my husband was active duty military, and I had several business endeavors going on with like real estate, and then I owned a construction company as well.
Wow.
And I came from a background of music and like corporate Hollywood music industry, and I did that for a lot of years. And got myself out of that for various reasons. I talk about it a little bit during the SaaS Summit, and it's been the best decision of my life. We formed Freedom Automations and Automations Genie and A2P Pros. We are launching A2P Pros actually next week while we're in Birmingham. So we're pretty excited about that.
Wow.
We have a kind of proprietary method on how we do A2P approvals, and we've got thousands and counting, and a lot of people that just can't get it done. They don't know what's wrong with it. So they're coming to us for that. So we're really excited about the A2P Pros deal. And what we specialize in is high-level consultation like strategy, actual strategy, helping people build the SOPs and the processes. And one thing we tend to do is we do a lot of complex custom builds. A lot of our builds, you got it, they're NDAs, they're for like kind of bigger businesses. We still do smaller builds as well, but the fun part for us, and I believe that we always need to keep fun at the forefront, or else we're just doing whatever it was we did before we got here, and we all have some sort of story of how we were miserable doing that, right? So
Exactly.
You got to keep it fun at the forefront, right? So one thing that I think keeps it fun for us at Freedom Automations is the consulting part. We like teaching. My husband did a lot of like teaching or, professing, in the military, because he was pretty high ranking and had a lot of guys that he would teach methods and things to that they needed to know, right? And so he is a natural instructor. I used to teach music and all these things and marketing and pretty big projects, which kind of allowed me to be a leader. So we kind of naturally got into the whole consulting thing. And I guess what I can say about High Level and what we enjoy about it and why we love it is because it allows people to cultivate their own freedom dreams, and it sounds a little cliche, but it's not. We're all here, entrepreneuring because we wanted something different, or we had some internal like pull that was just saying, I'm not okay with where I'm at, right? Or this is not okay, whatever the situation may have been, right? So that is really, really cool. It's hard to find a community like that, and I've never, it was funny when I was younger and I was like leaving the music industry and, going through the motions of all of that and trying to navigate like what I was going to do. Right. I always thought to myself, and I saw a lot of Grant Cardone, he would travel to LA and do things, Tony Robbins, stuff like that. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I leave the music industry, like I could go figure myself out and change lives. I could eventually do this. Right. And I kind of low key started to manifest these things. And I remember like saying over and over and over again, I'm going to probably somehow get into either tech, marketing, and figure out, and again, I touch on this and I'm going to touch on this in Birmingham, but figuring out how to express my art in another way. And that was probably like the biggest breakthrough that I had, like on a personal, spiritual, physiological level, really, was like, holy cow, I can use High Level to express my art in another way, which leads us to where we're at, So it's been a really, really cool experience.
Awesome, awesome. I think we spoke very briefly offline about this, but I often refer to myself as an undercover techie because I just love how when we work with high level, you can take the ideas that you have in your mind and how you've worked with clients and really package them up in a very unique way that's unique to you, that adds value and changes people's lives.
Yes.
Yeah, so we do that with podcasting, I suppose, very much like you're saying, which is to teach people. And so we package up and we help people to amplify their voices so they get focused on being the best that they can be rather than staying stuck in the weeds around the tech and the production and all that. And so that's how we use high level ourselves. So tell me, you mentioned that you work with your husband. How do you find that? I work with my husband as well. Do you work well together? Did it take a little while to learn to work together?
Well, let me take a sip of this tea before I spill it.
Spill the tea.
So, we are both very, very dominant people. So it has been very interesting navigating it because I do expect perfection, and that is not realistic. And so I'm working on it. Now, what I can tell you, and maybe people don't want to talk about this or admit it because it is pretty deep and requires being vulnerable, but one mistake I've made probably is basing how I feel that day sometimes on my husband based on what he accomplished on the agencies that we work for. And not to get like super spiritual here, but I am known for being very transparent and real. It's a constant battle and thing that I have to work on to know that if he upset an agency owner, that means nothing about our marriage. That means absolutely zero.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot be conditional on how I love my husband based on how things are going with customers, right? Now, let me preface it. This is a very shallow point, but we don't have a lot of issues with customers. So does that happen often? Not necessarily. But here's the other side of the coin. Because I tend to be such a perfectionist, it doesn't actually matter that it doesn't happen often because I get pretty upset the few times it does happen. So that's like something that we work on, that we're constantly working on, or myself. And I'm okay saying that. I think people want to hear they want to hear the truth, and they people in this industry and in the high level community, they want to talk about their struggles so bad. But if you put a post in the group or if you talk about something, you could get eaten alive. You just don't know.
Yeah.
And so I'm okay here talking about stuff like that because somebody has to do that. Somebody has to pave the way. In part of my speech for the summit, it's literally about bringing myself out of, and I don't get into the woo at all. I don't think people want to hear too much about that, so I don't go into it. But like pulling yourself up off the bathroom floor, like my life isn't over. I am alive. We're gonna make that. I'm gonna get out of this hole that I'm in. Like I got really sick. I was in a wheelchair. My leg broke. I was doing chemo. I lost my hair. Like I go into some of that, like, and you pull yourself out of that. But nobody usually wants to get dirty and talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's a lot of stuff that we're learning through our marriage. And then I guess on the other side of the coin, one thing that like married couples have to establish is a lot of times one or the other spouse can feel that their reputation is riding on the other one's performance. Mm-hmm. So for example, if when I am heading up, an Ian Lang, shout out to him, head of the CMO of Freedom Automations, the head of the marketing and sales department, if I come in on a Zoom and I meet for a few minutes with somebody they're meeting with and I talk to them for a little bit, I better not tell them that we can do something for them that we can't. Yeah. I better not tell them that we're going to be able to, take them to the moon with high level if we can't actually do it, right? So that's my husband's reputation. And if because like, let's say they move forward after that sales Zoom, right? and they show up on the special calendar of the new customers. They've signed the agreement, all that stuff. And Vicente's like, you told them I could build a rocket ship? So now that I can't build a rocket ship, now I'm going to look terrible. Like, why would you do that to me? Those are things that we've, over the past 4.5 years, figured out not to do to each other, and which has thankfully turned us into no men instead of yes men. I'd rather be a no man than a yes man. And so that's one thing. And then also, like, again, the other side of the coin in comparison would be when I'm telling someone that a build can be done in a certain amount of time, which, by the way, for anyone watching this, I'm very, very generic on that, because it's very interesting after you sign someone how long it can take for them to get you the info that you need.
Oh, anyway, my goodness, tell me about it.
Yeah. So when people say, can you have it done in 4 weeks? I'm like, can I? I don't think that's actually the question, sir, but we'll get into that. Anyway, so I'll, but let's say it's more of a solid customer who actually has kind of their stuff together and they have everything a little bit, organized. And they ask me, hey, can it be done in 6 weeks or something? And I tell them it can be done in 6 weeks. I want him to have it done in 5 weeks. I want it to be like whatever. So again, not to drag that one on, but it's so many things, and a lot of people want to act like everything's great when they're making all this money and stuff. And the problem is, or the truth is, not the problem. The truth is that there's plateaus, there's levels, and there's a devil for every new level. So we got to talk about it,
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. So my husband and I, we've been working together for a long time, and I am notorious for promising to build rocket ships in 2 weeks. And he's like, you can't do that.
Yes.
But he's very good at figuring out how to build the rocket ship. He always says that's his job. My job is to be the creative, and his is to figure out how the hell we're going to do it.
Yes.
Which we always do. But yes, there are, like you say, there are ups and downs, and I would say that for me, if it wasn't for James, I think I'd spend far more time on the bathroom floor. He's very good at picking me up, keeping me going, keeping me motivated, and realizing that we are human, and that we just can't be perfect all the time. So that I've learned over the years is that you've got to just keep moving forward, be better next time. So that's my big lesson as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just learning,
Yeah. So have you found, you said that you've got 2 kids. I've got, my daughter is 15 this year. She turned 16. She's 15 at the moment. How have you found balancing motherhood with entrepreneurship?
So I have struggled with it. I think that's the best way to start. That's the truest answer. I've gotten way better at it. Now I am somebody who tends to get sensory overload. So that is something that I'm working on, because a lot of loud noises are tough. Okay. I have a 3.5-year-old. Yeah. So that says anything. And then obviously I had, our 12-year-old Callie. She was a child, a young child at one point as well. Okay, so I have 2 very highly intelligent, rambunctious, wild children, and have a mind of their own. Thankfully, they're in general well behaved. They're not naughty, if that makes sense. I'll take wild and rambunctious. That's fine. They have character. Couple things here. I made the mistake of, when Luna was born, our 3.5-year-old, I did an all natural birth in the pool in our house, all that. And that night we went back to the doula, everybody left later, all that stuff. And we laid in bed. I was breastfeeding my newborn baby, and I was doing high level stuff. That was the day she was born. She was born around 11 or 12, noon. And then we went back to work that night. And, this was she's about to be 4. So this is right when high level had come out. We were starting to really get it down and master it. And so we were just it's go time, we're young still. I was, barely 30 years old. My husband wasn't even 30 years old yet. We we were like, it's go time. There's no like, we just had a baby. Like these are the hours we got to put in if we want to get to where we want to get.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't necessarily say that I would do it different, but I will say that it was go time, and thankfully this leads me into, I made it a point to always have my baby on me or with me. And then, we got a live-in nanny. She came in, this awesome gal, Cree from Brazil, for a year and a half to help, with Luna. And so I could run this business. And I was doing Zooms 15 hours a day. Like, wow. I'm not exaggerating. And then I was teaching how to make, and we don't do this service at all, boy, thank the Lord. But I co-founded a media buying agency years ago and was teaching people how to not go bankrupt running paid ads and teaching them the basics. And these classes would go for 2 to 3 hours. And, it was just a lot. And we would teach them to people to help them so their businesses weren't failing. And we were doing that. We were like, I was making dinner and cleaning up and then running around with this baby. And then we would run the class from 7 p.m. and it would go till 9 or 10 p.m. And we were doing that a couple times a month on top of the Zooms, 12 to 15 hours a day of sales and me training, other people and stuff. So long story short is motherhood has been like exhausting for me because I had an upcoming agency that I knew was going to take a lot of time and work ethic. And I knew that it was go time, Now, thankfully it paid off, here you and I are speaking, right? So it did pay off, but I had to learn how to shut everything out, and I'm still learning how to do that, at 35. So I'm like very hands-on still in some ways. And it's a journey. It's a journey. I don't have it mastered yet, Now, here's what I did do to ensure that my kids would have a better life, or what I think is a better life. A couple of years back, we said, hey, I think it's time that we need to consider moving out of the United States. We as parents, so our kids aren't like super, super into phones and stuff. Okay. And we don't allow that. All right. Because they need to be outside, swimming in the pool, doing things like that, being in the rainforest, doing surf club, whatever. Right. And so that's what we did. We bought a plot of land near the beach in Costa Rica. And we built an office and, and then a main house and then outdoor kind of like entertainment area and a private pool and like a meeting place and then a pool house for people to stay as well. And so we did that and we've been here for a year. The property and the new office and all that is about to have our grand opening and all that coming up here in a few months. So we're really excited about it. So we did do a lot of big moves as parents for our children, but even though like so many people on the internet are like, oh, I made it. I moved out of the country. I did this. I retired my husband. I retired my wife. That's all great and fine. But what's the quality of life that you're still living after you did that? Right. And so that's what we're perfecting now. We did the hard part. Now we got to do the even harder part. Now we have to like tighten our marriage up and tighten our relationship up and tighten everything up. And that's not a scary thing. That's a normal thing. Everyone should be doing this. Okay. After because you hit these plateaus, of your goals and stuff. So that's something that we're doing now. Like, okay, we're here, we're in paradise. It's built. Everything's great. Now we're making good money. Life's fine. We work hard. Okay. What's next? How do we become better people? How do we become better parents? How do we so then we got involved in the community. Then we partnered, we founded a school here a couple months ago. So I opened a school. Like, how do you become better? And I talk about this in my speech as well. Once you get past this and get past physical ailments, get past mental, get past, telling people no when you told them yes before, then you get into being a better person, being a better parent, being better for your community, getting involved in your community. Those are actually all levels of like ascension, really, as a person or a human, right? So yeah, we're just figuring it out like everybody else.
Amazing. I love that. So we've also moved so much over the years. I'm South African. My husband was born in the UK. So we met out in South Africa. We moved to the
Wow.
UK, had our daughter, and I went, what? So we went back home to South
Right.
Africa for 7 years. And it was idyllic, in that, you sun, sea, and sand. However,
Yes.
the political situation and crime in South
Yes.
Africa is so dangerous that
Yes.
essentially we went, that's not a good environment. So we moved back to the UK. We lived in San Francisco for a couple of months. We
Ooh.
came back. So we too have done our fair share of moving, and we
Yes.
are now at a point where she is online, and we're looking at, right, how do we broaden our horizons and her horizons,
Hmm.
and maybe do some traveling around the US and explore other cultures and other environments.
Hmm.
So she's also very much been right, like, with me since she was a baby. And when you were telling me your story about the day your daughter was born, it reminded me that I did actually also have a work call on that day, and I've completely forgotten.
Yes. Yes, we do that. Women do that. We do
We
all the
do, we
things.
absolutely do. But you know what? I think now that she's 15, she's definitely learned so much about resilience, about grit, about pushing through, about doing what it takes. And I think that as a whole person, she's far more mature than a lot of kids her age.
Oh, I'm sure. And she has entrepreneurial parents, so that's going to be a totally different deal.
Absolutely, absolutely. She's super ambitious. So I'm excited to see, like, the adult that she becomes, because she's definitely developing her own personality. And I think, having spent, years at the bottom of my desk, she knows when I'm on a call not to interrupt, and she's known that since she was probably 3 or 4 or 5. So, but as moms, there's definitely mom guilt
Right.
that we experience. But what I have my only regret is that you have to remember, for any moms, is that you can put your business and give it the attention that it needs, but you must make time for your kids. It dawned on me last summer. I only have 3 summers left with her. That made me stop and think and actually take me downtime with her. So that's one thing that I've learned over the years. But it's all good.
Yeah, they fly by. The years, they just fly.
They do. It sounds so cliched, but it absolutely does.
Yeah.
Kaitlyn, tell me a bit more about, like, you've mentioned mindset quite a bit, and I think one of the things I've learned in being in business for so many years is that entrepreneurship is definitely a mindset game. In that, it's how long can you push through? How do you approach failure, and how do you actually keep yourself going, motivated when the rewards are not obvious? And I think that's a big thing for entrepreneurs. And you've overcome quite a lot. So talk to me a bit about your mindset on how you keep yourself motivated and
Yeah.
pushing for next.
So I think that it's always good to start actually with taking accountability. And so what happens is we actually forget, or we're not aware, that most of the situations that we get in past a certain age are because we were looking for a certain feeling or to fill a certain something. Okay. So how that looks is we make decisions based off of what we're trying to fill. So anything that I mildly regret in my life, literally can track it back to why I did it very quickly. And most of it was out of fear and desperation.
Mm.
And so when I say fear and desperation, it doesn't mean that you are homeless on the street. It doesn't mean that you got fired from your job. It doesn't mean that you're in a horrible marriage. Fear and desperation can look very different for every single person. Okay. You can be extremely wealthy. You can be doing just fine, sort of well off. It doesn't matter. Fear and desperation doesn't have favorites. It'll get us all. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
like that.
yeah. So based on that, here is what happens. And this is hard to do when you're in the basically factually it's a chemical imbalance or chemical reaction to fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
It causes this in your body and your mind. And so what happens is we make decisions, usually pretty rash, or decisions where the outcome is very unlikely to be in your favor. But we make those decisions, you know, willingly. And we a lot of times think they're pretty calculated. But what's so interesting is what the human mind is capable of. We're able to convince ourselves of anything, you know. You find, and this is like a very dark example, but a lot of people I think forget because we're all just full of ego, you know, and I touch a little bit on that in Birmingham. Like a lot of us think, oh, I'm fine, or oh, I couldn't do that, or oh, whatever. There's people who have murdered people who don't remember it. They legitimately don't remember it. Their mind has erased it. Okay. Something happened. There was a glitch. We really don't know, right? Those things can happen. If that can happen, here's what I can tell you. The mind is capable to do a lot of powerful things. So if that's possible, then the opposite is possible. And by opposite, I mean something like, a good example would be, a lot of people are like, well, how do I know to make that decision? How do I know to take a step back? How do I know if I'm in fight or flight? Well, there's a couple things you can do, you know. You can literally ask yourself, 5 years from now, what am I going to get out of this? What could happen? And usually you can answer that pretty quickly, pretty easily, because what happens is, if you ask yourself a question about a decision you're about to make in 5 years from now, and that decision's based on like immediateness, like you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that definitely won't help me in 5 years. This is really just for right now. Or, you know, then another example would be like, I tended to be one of those people that when something, you know, bad happened, I was like, oh, this could be really bad, you know, just full of fear, honestly scared of everyone and everything. And you can't really be like that. You can't really live your life like that, right? So the number one thing you have to ask yourself is, what is this going to do 5 years from now for me? The next thing is, who am I actually doing this for?
Yeah.
A lot of times, a lot of times we get ourselves in things, our body, our mind goes into fight or flight, and we make rash decisions because of other people too. And how do we get into that? You know, boundaries. That's why I say, like, starting with accountability. I did a podcast interview a couple months ago about this, and the guy was like, you know, I think you just really ruffled some feathers and really made people like get real with themselves, because everybody, when they say mindset, like, it's not just about like, be positive, pick yourself up off the floor, like all this stuff. It's like, how'd you get there? Yeah. What, you didn't feel loved enough, so you let people treat you badly, and you don't have any boundaries, and blah, 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 and you tell everybody yes when you should tell them no, and all these things. And people are like, well, that's pretty rough. Okay, well, your life's going pretty rough. Do you want me to be rough now so you have a smooth life later? Or, you know, and these are like the real deal things that I think even therapists out there have trouble, you know, getting real with their clients at times over things like this. I don't have to worry about that. I can say whatever I want. I don't have the therapy license. You know, I can just be real with people. You have to take accountability, because you can run around saying all the time you had a tough life. I had a tough life. I was one of those young kids involved in all that stuff in Hollywood that I won't get into. There's a reason I'm not there. And I could run around saying that like a bunch of men ruined my life and took my innocence, but I'm not going to like cry about it. I'm going to use it as an inspiring story to be like, it doesn't matter who you are. If I can do it, anybody can do it. You know? And so I think that's really important, because you can't, you know, you just can't do that. The victimization has to go away. And here's the thing. A lot of times I think we associate people who victimize themselves as like the bad guy. Maybe they just haven't been given any tools or resources to understand that you can pivot from that, you know, maybe, you know, so there's so much about mindset that, you know, I could go on and on and on about, and a lot of it starts with accountability to yourself. Another thing, I'll say this, and a lot of people don't want to hear this. When you wake up in the morning, I tell people, I used to have a private mastermind for mostly women. This was, a couple years back, but one of the exercises that we did was audit your mornings. And what that did was, because a lot of people think they're really doing stuff, or they're like getting things done or whatever. And then I would have them audit their mornings and they would give it to me and I'd be like, so what did you actually do? Because all I see here is, da da da. And the other thing is like, if your life is so, so horrible, what are you doing when you get up in the morning to change that? Are you making conscious efforts? Because I'm pretty sure there's a saying out there that doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results is called insanity, So it's like, are you getting up every morning and just like the first thing you do is open TikTok or social media or some sort of drama or like starting something with somebody, or like, are you getting up in the morning and dedicating the morning to like honor yourself and like set boundaries with yourself and like others and maybe make some goals for the day, things like that, because the word means love. And self-discipline is probably the best single act of self-love that you could give. And once you take ownership of your humanness and your space and yourself and your soul, I think that's when things start to kind of come together a little more, But yeah, mindset's pretty, lot of layers to it, Yeah. Again, just preaching, be positive, be positive, be positive. Well, if you're continuously doing things that are detrimental to yourself, thinking positive will do nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So one of the things that I've seen to grow confidence, because people are like, well, how do I grow confidence in that? And one of the biggest game changers for me has been the more promises you keep with yourself, the more your confidence grows. Because the more confident you become, you can keep promises to yourself, you can keep promises and commitments to other people. And then the next level of that is that the more promises you keep, the more disciplined you'll be. And the more disciplined and consistent you are, the faster you'll get to where you want to go.
You're honoring yourself. I think people don't recognize so much that one of the reasons that we do a lot of stuff fear-based is because low key, we actually don't trust ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't trust ourselves to get things done, to be honest, to get something done on a timeline. A lot of it is self-hatred and it's overshadowed by ego and fear. We cover it up with different layers, you know what I mean? But if you're honoring yourself and going through with your word and all that fun stuff, then you're like, oh, wow, I am an awesome person. I am a good person. And what happens is that confidence overshadows fear. Fear starts to vanish and the real whole human starts to come through,
Yeah, for sure. And do you think that women suffer with this more than men?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think it would be really easy to say yes. I think it would be easy to say yes. And I think that probably true. I think it's probably true. Okay. The reason I say probably is because there are pockets of people on the internet that will tell me I'm wrong. So, and that I'm not a man. So anyway, for you all, I will say probably. But yeah. So
yeah,
I think so. And I think that so I think it's really, really interesting that women have to, well, it's just a standard that's been set and it's really hard to get out of it, the entrepreneurial, if she wants to do that, okay, that's fine. But then she's got to be able to take care of the house too. But if she works too much, then we got to get the nanny and a housekeeper involved in. And then when she does that, the shame and guilt sets in. I mean, I had to let all that go when we hired, like staff for our home and the business and stuff. But still, it's a tough one. I do think women have more trouble with it. Also, I think that it's really hard for women in this industry to be able to express themselves, or else they will be labeled as too much or emotional or a problem, you know?
Yeah.
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 So yeah, I think it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially in the kind of tech side of things where it does tend to be quite male dominated. So if you go to the summits and you go to your tech events, women make up such a small percentage, like 10% can be a lot often. And I think that we're often overlooked. Like, are you the secretary or are you the assistant, like who actually runs the business? No, actually, it's my business. So I've come up with that a
Yes.
few times. So it's interesting. I think we judge ourselves a bit more because we know what the stereotypes are.
Yes.
Just
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely. I definitely felt it, in the run up to the Birmingham event.
Yes. Man. And it's really interesting because there is a touch that women put in a business that a man never could.
Yeah.
And I will say this. Historically speaking, women actually were leaders of entire cultures, countries, other realms. I won't even get into that. But back in the day, we were actually running things. And there was a switch at one point, or this facade that men have always been doing it.
Hmm.
And that's fine. Y'all have your time. Enjoy it. We'll come back around. History always repeats itself, or so they say.
Yeah, they do. Thank you. So you've got two daughters, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can see, if I often explain to my daughter that she needs to understand how privileged she is in the sense that 20 years, 30 years ago, even some actually in a lot of cases, 10 years ago, women didn't have the same opportunities that she does now. And so, as very strong female leaders like you and I are, we have to instill that in our daughters and ensure that they are pushing the envelope and pushing
Absolutely.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Who was it? Marilyn Monroe said, well-behaved women rarely make history. Pretty sure.
Yeah, I think I can definitely put myself in that category. I'm not very well behaved.
Same. And if I was, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I'd probably, still
Yeah.
be stuck in, a career that I, wasn't enjoying. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's pain in the beauty. And when I say that, I don't mean like, on the outside. I mean the beauty of true inside, finding yourself and aligning with what you're probably meant to be doing. And, it's very painful, but the end of the tunnel is very beautiful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's look just for a moment and go back to thinking about high level. So, from what excites you about high level? I mean, you're an entrepreneur and you get to see really under the hood in terms of the custom
Mm-hmm.
builds that you do, and you really get to manipulate high level to do lots of different things. So, what is it
Yes.
about high level that really intrigues you and excites you?
So let's start with kind of like basic level, I guess, or like tier one would be the fact that a lot of people just don't know what it can do. Now, we are not feature focused. I'm here to solve your problems. There's a million features. We'll see what we need. I need to know what you want to do or what your offers are. Okay. So that's
Mm-hmm.
number one. So I don't get obsessed about features, which we spoke about that. A lot of people said that. I said that on stage last week in
Yeah.
Dallas. Don't get obsessed over features. Um, and so number one, I like selling a solution. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, the reason I enjoy high level is because I understand it on a really deep level. And because of that, I'm actually able to provide solutions for people within like the sales call. Okay, so for
Mm-hmm.
example, I love that I'm able to kind of nix anything that they wanted to do with it that maybe somebody else would have lied and said the yes men out there. They would have said, yes,
Yeah.
high level can do this. I know it well enough to know what it can and cannot do most of the time. My husband and his teammates even more so deeper than me. So like we're able to save people money right off the bat by being no people instead of yes people. So I enjoy being able to provide solutions with the software without even people paying me anything yet. That's cool as heck. The next thing would be, I would say that like a lot of people are coming to us and they're like, hey, it's interesting because a lot of them barely have done any research on it. So like not all, I mean, I serve a lot of agencies, so they know the software in and out. They just need some sort of support to, you know, move it off. But some of the calls are people who haven't done any research. They just know that they want to use it, if that makes sense. And they'll be like, yeah, but I'll keep the courses in Kajabi and I'll do this, but I want it to do all this. And that's when I get excited and go, listen up. We can actually do all this inside here. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, absolutely everything you've said or shown me on this shared screen, whatever it may be, can be done inside here. And their face lights up and they're like, holy cow, because I'm paying blank blank for this. And they want this out of me starting next month for that. Things like that. So that's nice as well to be able to, again, solve a problem, give them good news, save them from spending money, et cetera, et cetera. And then I would say lastly, I like that it's customizable. We are people that at this time, we do not sell snapshots. Okay. We're just custom builders. If somebody's going to come to me, I just want to do it from the ground up, because you're not going to be able to just take that and use it. We need to work with you. We got to meet with you. We need to show you some stuff and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with selling snapshots if that's your niche. Totally cool. Do it. That's a service everybody needs, right? But I like personally being like the custom one-stop shop. The only thing that might happen is if you don't need a lot of support or something, we might send you off to, you know, Extendly or something, you know, after that, if you need, you know, monthly tech support or something like that. So yeah, I like that. I really like being a problem solver. And I will say, and I got to give a shout out to my team. The reason we're able to solve the problems in the way that we do at Freedom Automations is because we decided from early on, we're not really going to be salespeople. We're going to actually know the system in and out. And, you know, that's the direction we went. And that's the lane that we stayed in.
Amazing. Amazing. So for me, the way I've looked at high level is, as opposed to building snapshots and selling them, I've looked at how do we take all of our marketing knowledge. So, you know, when you're running a marketing agency and you're building websites and you're running campaigns, and what happens is people go, fantastic, there's the strategy, like what next? And so the implementation, it all gets lost in implementation. And so for us, we're able to say, right, this particular niche, so we chose podcasting, and this particular niche needs these 5 different systems. So we look at strategic guesting, we look at effortless hosting, we look at the premium production, and then the distribution and promotion aspects. And we're able to basically create this content ecosystem. And I think that's where we really specialize, is that how do you join the dots between everything you need to do to achieve the result that you want?
I love your concept.
Do you?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I only know 2 other people who are even like super successful and actually have their system and their podcast thing down. I think it's amazing. And it's such a niche thing that everyone needs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. You know, like podcasting is this blue ocean strategy in that does amazing things for your profile, for your authority, for getting known. But there are so many moving parts that very few people actually properly implement it. So there's something like 4.2 million podcasts in the world, but only 156,000 podcasts actually produce weekly. So, you know, that is this opportunity of a lifetime to get in quickly. It's like being on YouTube when there were only 10,000 channels. You know, like now's the time to get into it. But because there are so many moving parts, that's why people don't keep going. So that's why when we saw high level, we looked at, right, these are the moving parts you need. But, you know, like just trying to schedule a guest is probably one of the biggest challenges that our clients really struggle with, is like, because they drop out, they cancel, then so you spend all the time trying to schedule them. They
Yeah.
don't show up. And like now you spend all this time and now you don't have anywhere else to go. Whereas now you can build a pipeline and you can see when you're running short on guests. So that's kind
Yes.
of how we've looked at it, is how do you take everything that someone needs to do a great job and take away 80% of the heavy lifting, so
Right.
that the host can focus on doing what they do well, which is the interview.
Yeah, and they're creative. It's art. It's everybody's trying to figure out how to express their art in some way.
Yeah.
You know? Yep. And there's so many shiny objects and so many things, and like what you just ran through, all the tasks and all the things that have to do with the podcasting and the system and the ecosystem of it. Most of those people don't have the capacity to be able to do any of that stuff. They just don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're very excited. That's what we love most about High Level. And so my talk next week is very much about how do you take what you know and package it up in a way that is not just snapshotting it, but is actually
Exactly
adding value and making your life easier.
I am so excited to see this. I need it. I need the service. We registered it, have the domain, did the whole thing. We started.
Really?
We got several celebrities. Elena Cardone has agreed to come on. So yeah, voice of the entrepreneur. I own the name, trademarked it, did the domain, everything, and the acronym is VOTE, VOTE, voice of the entrepreneur. And so we've lined up a bunch of celebrities and people from TV, internet, music industry, a bunch of agency leaders and high level people. And I have not launched it because I am one of those people that takes the launches very seriously. I don't assume I know what I'm doing unless it's in my lane. So we knew we were going to have to be very calculated on how we were going to do it. So we lined up massive celebrities to be able to get the clicks and to get the interest. What we haven't done is done the build out, done everything, because I assumed we were going to have to get a service done to be able to do it. So I will have to talk to you about that.
There we go. We'll definitely have a chat next week about that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Kaitlyn, I think we're going to draw close there on our podcast interview.
Sure.
What do you think is probably for those agencies who have not started using High Level or who have only just dipped their toe in, what do you think is the number one thing they should consider to really harness the power of Go High Level?
Got it. Couple things. Number one, are you better at sales or are you better at tech? Decide in the next couple weeks. If you started today or got a free trial or whatever you're doing, decide what's your skill set. Maybe take some assessment. You're going to probably know whether you hate programming, coding, computers. I'm not working in the system anymore. Although I am an expert, that's not my job anymore. It's as a founder, I'm doing AI and meeting with people, speaking on stages. Will I always be an expert? Sure. But like, have I had to turn slowly into a salesperson for it? Yes, that happened organically, kind of naturally, right? But that's as you like scale and get to be a bigger company. But at one point in time, what was I? I was more of the expert, right? And the techie. So you've got to decide what you're going to be. My point was you don't have to be that forever, but you need to figure out what your lane is and stay in it. Because if you don't, here's what happens. You get bad reviews, you get labeled a con artist, scam artist. The internet's kind of undefeated. They will, and not all of it's warranted either. There's crazy people out there just being mean, jumping on a bandwagon. But, the bottom line is figure out what your lane is. Are you techie or are you salesy? If you're salesy, go find a tech people background like us or somebody like us. Okay. We do that all the time. I do a lot of like fulfillment for people. They bring us the leads. We meet together. We do the sales call. We land it. I fulfill it. Everybody's happy. You continue to make sales. If not, then you got to find salespeople. Now, here's what I will say. It is easier if you are the salesperson and can find the leads and bring the leads. It's easier to find a back fulfillment. It's harder if you are fulfillment, tech, nerdy, don't know anything about sales, to find a salesperson. And let me explain why. Because you're dependent sometimes. If you're a techie, nerdy person that wants to run the back end of High Level, you're going to have to either find a way to bring in leads for that salesperson,
Mhm.
Or you're going to have to form a partnership where this person somehow randomly has access to leads, lists, whatever the heck it is. Maybe y'all are going to run ads together. You're going to pay for it. You're going to send them to them. They're going to do commission based. You're going to have to think about these things. Okay. So there's many options here. And I have a little mastermind for agency owners now, in high level. And I teach a lot of this stuff, and it is tough. There are people struggling trying to figure this out. So like, let's be honest. It's not an overnight thing, but you can do it. That's the number one thing you got to do, is decide what you're going to be good at, and then find the partner or find the person. Then the next thing is make sure they actually care. Make sure that they're going to give it their all. Make sure that you figure out stuff. Also, the next thing is, if you're a young agency owner and you're just coming into this, starting, your own firm, agency, whatever, marketing company, here's what you shouldn't do. Never assume that your partner or the person that you're dancing around, tiptoeing around, maybe doing a deal with or partnering with, never assume that everything's just cool on a handshake. Okay?
No.
Never just assume stuff. All right? Because what happens is, and this is, I teach a lot on this when I speak to like corporations and stuff on team building. Resentment is one of the silent resentment is actually what it is. I call it the silent and deadly resentment.
Yeah.
People, even good people, everyone, myself, we have all made the mistake of assuming something or thinking everything's okay, and not knowing that we're slowly forcing that person to resent us. That is really, really important, that you get all that stuff out of the way so that doesn't happen in the midst of a launch of your business. Okay. So remember that. Never assume anything. Get everything like super, super tight, because the best of us, the nicest of people ever, can accidentally form resentments or people form them against us. Right. And then the next thing would be your offer. Okay. We all talk about how don't talk about features, don't talk about features, don't talk about features. You're overwhelming them, blah, blah, blah. That is true. Okay. But you do have to decide what the heck you're going to offer. So at that point, you do have to open up Pandora's box of features and start to silently by yourself or with your team go through what you're going to do and decide that. Now, here's then the tough, deep, complicated part. After you've opened up Pandora's box and you've looked at all of these features for maybe weeks, tested them, Googled, YouTubed, watched it all, right? Maybe made a couple posts in the high level official group and got your ass whooped. I don't know. Anyway, okay, listen, some people are like unforgiving as hell. Anyway, you, after like weeks of R&D, you've decided you like this set of features. Okay, great. How are you going to solve people's problems with those features and demo them or convince them without showing them all of those features? What is the problem you're solving? Now you have to blanket those features you've favorited into an offer. So I'm sure everybody's like, wow, I didn't know it took all of that. Yeah, it does. If you want to be successful, it does take that. So that is my advice. Long-winded, but I do believe it's really good advice.
Oh no, I think 100% correct advice. I think where a lot of agency or new agency owners go wrong is that they are almost overwhelmed themselves by the number of features of Go High Level, and they just try and sell it straight out the gate. So they just want to set up a page that looks like High Level and sell that on. And you're like, well, why would I buy it from you then and not from direct from High Level? And so
absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm also part of a mastermind with Dan Martell's coaching group.
Oh, he's amazing.
He is just amazing, and if you haven't looked at his coaching, you absolutely have to.
I am looking at it now.
You?
So I was on his live the other day and asked a question, and he answered it on one of his lives on Instagram. He got me. I'm like, man.
Okay, you will not regret it. It is one of the best decisions I've ever made. The group, the community within Elite is phenomenal. It's all of us trying to think, how do we get to the next level? How do we improve our life? How do we improve our relationships? How do we build the business that we never want to retire from? As opposed to how are we going to get to exit? And that's not
how are we going to exit.
And, buy back your time. If you've read the book, or if you haven't read the book, read the book. It's life-changing. don't
I need that. I need that.
Don't hesitate. I can highly recommend it.
Yeah. Because I talk about this, I touch on it in the speech, and I know we're rounding down here, but I love that method of like the business that you don't want to retire from, because most people after they retire get very unhealthy and they die.
Yeah.
The mind stays alive when the body fades when the body starts to fade. It's like, yeah. I don't want to retire and then do nothing and then gain 50 pounds and then die.
Yeah. Exactly. And a couple of things that you said earlier, especially around your move to Costa Rica, your kids' life, I think your philosophies will align so well with the elite community. Just in how do you get to here and then go to the next level and then to the next level.
Yes.
I just 100% recommend it.
I need it. My goal is, and this will take a bit, but my next goal would be like, I'd like for us to hit like the 5 to 10 million a year mark instead of where we're at. And the goal would be 25 million a year between the consulting and the builds and, the speaking stuff. So and he talks on those numbers and those things and hits those. And with me, I was like, okay, it's great. Again, new levels, it's like, years ago, I'm sure we were all like, man, I want 10K a month. This was like 25K a month, like, wow. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, how do we make 25 million a year? So,
and I think what you'll love about Elite is that there's so many people at each of the levels. So the next ones will move. So you can
see what it looks like.
Be pulled up and give back. So I highly recommend
it. I gotta check it out. You've sold me. I'm already getting all of his stuff. I'm already getting notified every time he goes live. So he sent me a DM on Instagram like 3 weeks ago, and he was like, "Hey, Kaitlyn, checked out your stuff. Would love to speak with you." And I was like, "Not right now, man. I broke my foot and I'm going to Dallas. I don't have time for this right now, Dan."
Oh, you do. I'll tell you more. I'll tell you more.
Sure. Right on.
Anyway, Kaitlyn, it has been the most wonderful conversation with you today. I absolutely cannot wait to sit down to dinner with you next week.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
You're going to just love London. Remember to bring warm clothes. It's a whole lot colder here than it is where you are.
Yeah. Is it pretty cold right now?
Yes. I've got short, long sleeves.
Okay.
No, so it's average. It's about between 18 and 20 degrees.
Okay. Got it. All right.
But got it. It is cool. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on the Profitable Podcast. It has been wonderful. And thank you to our listeners. I think Kaitlyn has shared the most amazing, really actionable and tactical mindset tips for you. And if you, of course, want to dig deeper into Go High Level, Kaitlyn's links will be down below. If you're looking for a podcast, you always know where to come from. This is Leanne Scott from the Profitable Podcast.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.